And last but certainly not least, let us celebrate 25 years of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And this is not going to be a play-by-play of every single thing that happened in the show, because if it was, it'd be a much longer, segment, right? But this is more like this.
Not red letter media.
Yeah, no. Sorry about that, right? But yeah, this is just thoughts that came to mind, notes that I took down while I was rewatching this, right? And just thoughts on it, now, after, having not seen it over the past 10 years or so, right? Because yes, believe it or not, I actually rewatched this a couple of times. I didn't just see it once in 99 and moved on, right? I saw it a couple more times, and I would say this is probably the fourth time that I've seen this in my life, right? But anyway, so that's just, and of course, Ricardo, you could button and mention things that stood out to you or not, right?
Right.
So pre-ramble time, right? So what makes this show pretty interesting, right, is that a prequel trilogy, right, was never done up until this point, at least not to my memory, right? Also, it took me a hot minute, right? But I was reminded of this, right? Yeah, this was actually released back in 2012, I believe it was, in 3D. And I did not watch this in 3D, but I'll get to that why, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't bother to rewatch it in cinema, right?
They're just a play on the 3D hype.
Exactly. Look. I watched Titanic in 3D. It's like, all right, I see it in 3D. Okay, cool. Because the movie is great. But other than that, I don't need to see every re-release in 3D, right? Just seeing. But yeah, you know what I mean? When it comes to Star Wars itself, right? Just me being introduced to Star Wars, right? You have to keep in mind, folks, that we were born after the original trilogy ended, right? So we didn't grow up on Star Wars, right? We knew it existed, we had toys and whatnot. But for me, I did not see Episode 4 until a little station called AVM, Channel 416, decided to run that. That's Star Wars. Oh, okay. Because, you kind of sort of just knew about it through pop culture osmosis, right?
Before they call it Episode 4, because that whole Episode 4 thing kind of come after the fact.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was just Star Wars and
Star Wars,
yeah. And at the time, as a kid, I didn't even think about it, but I thought it was kind of cool seeing, this new movie that I'm seeing here, is giving the impression that this is some ongoing series, giving the impression that this series has been going on, and what you're seeing here is Episode 4, right? But I thought that was pretty cool, right? But George Lucas, no, I actually had episodes before that, so he waited, he waited, basically what it is, right? He waited until computer generated imagery, or CGI, got to a certain level, let's just say a photorealistic level, that he could pull off the kind of effects that he wished he could have pulled off back in the late 70s and 80s. So the man waited out literally all through the 90s. Man was observing the evolution of visual effects in cinema. So yeah, I feel like he was tuning into everything that James Cameron was doing, especially with stuff like Terminator 2 and Titanic and whatnot. Okay. Just now, James, do your thing. And then when the time was right, okay, all right, coming hard now, you know what I mean? And then that's where this thing came up, right? But yeah, didn't see Episode 4 till it came out on AVM, right? But then in 1997, a pretty interesting year for me, because that was a year where we got Batman, Robin, and Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Yeah, they decided to re-release the Star Wars trilogy. I was like, okay.
Yeah,
and
I remember.
I saw 1 and 2. I should say Episode 4 and 5. I did not see 6 theatrically. I had to wait till it came out on cable, because Channel 4 only showed the first one, so I had to wait till 2000s when I got cable, right? So that's when I got cable. It's like, oh, okay, that's Return of the Jedi. Oh, that's how you saw it. Okay, cool, right? No problem. But yeah, back in 97, they re-released the trilogy. And what they did, and it's something that, Lucas is kind of, infamous for. Yeah, he alters certain shots, right? He alters certain VFX shots. Well, you call them VFX shots for now, right? So they don't look as hokey as they did back in the 70s. Gonna put the little CG dazzle, and whatnot, right? So make it work, right? So, it was like that, right? So I just thought, okay, re-release of the trilogy. Okay, cool, no problem, right? And then 99 came, and we was hearing about Phantom Menace coming out, right? And
Right.
I don't know about you, Ricardo, but I will never forget hearing about, lines around the block, like just lines waiting, like people sleeping out
No, yeah, the
the
hype.
outside theaters,
No,
for
yeah,
all night,
yeah.
just to
The
go in and
hype.
see
The
this,
hype was. Yeah, the hype was real. Like I remember
It
seeing the
was
trailer.
real, boy.
Yeah, the trailer blew everybody away. I forget what it was that they showed the trailer on for the first time. I think it was like I think the MTV Awards or one of those. I forget the actual when it actually premiered. But I remember watching the premiere, blown away by it. Like wow, it's like they look young Obi-Wan Kenobi and so on, so on, young Anakin and so on, so. But yeah, the
Yes.
big hype was it. I think it's Meet Joe Black.
Which came out in 98, yes. So,
Right.
the
So
trailer
that
came out then.
Right. So that is the first.
Okay, I
So
didn't
the
know.
reason. So the movie Meet Joe Black was that got a ton of sales, and people was like, wait, why this movie making so much money now? And it is the reason why is people are just going to see the trailer, so they just
Shit, right.
buy tickets to see Joe Black, and then like, oh shit, that real hard us. Like, all
Yeah,
right, what?
yeah. Well, I mean, look, the power of the movie trailer, right? Look, perfect
Yeah.
example. The first
Is the
Spider-Man
first
trailer.
is it, no, but it's the first
Like
time
that.
you get the sense. Yeah, no, but it's the first time you get the sense of like the idea of a virality and the concept that's how to hit people for the first time. Yeah, I think that Star Wars trailer did that, where you're
Yes.
going for the thing, not the main thing, and the people have no problem paying money just to see the trailer. Like, all
Yes.
right, that's real fascinating. There, so is that.
Right. So just few things, and then you'll get to how you got into the Phantom Menace, right? So yeah, so growing up in the 90s for me, like there was no Star Wars cartoons for me to watch.
Right.
And I didn't even bother to seek out any comics or
So
novels
yeah,
because my mind was on Marvel and DC when it came to
right, no,
comics
yeah.
and shit. So,
In the 90s, yeah, the Star Wars franchise was um it was just like a workable conceit uh as it is. And then one of the big problem is that how Star Wars used to control the material now, so LucasArts film. So yeah, the only way you was getting access to Star Wars is through the games.
right.
It had a
I'll
major
mention I'll mention some of the games in my
yeah.
review, but yeah, go on.
And then only until this came out, that's when they started to push extra games and extra material as it was. But yeah, the Star Wars
Yes.
games is the only way. You like I think Rogue Squadron was a big game.
Yeah.
When
I remember Rogue
first came out,
Squadron.
yeah, and so on and so forth, because that came out around the same time Star Fox came out, so it was like about as good,
Yes.
same kind of tech. And I remember there's a bunch of weird games, and it just mostly the expanded universe was dominated the narrative over this now because nobody had any workable conceit as it was. When did Rogue Squadron came out? Yes, that was 98. And that was I remember having that for the PC, but it also came out for the Nintendo 64 and I think PlayStation. But so it's so on and so forth. And I remember just being really impressed with that stuff until episode 1. So that's just everything to lead up to that now. I was never a Star Wars fan. More of a Star Trek kid, kind of obvious.
Kind of obvious.
Right, but the Star Wars franchise I kind of get, but again, not really a fan, mostly because it's so big. You learn it through sheer osmosis. Is about it. But this was really had me hyped, and only problem with this movie that didn't have me as hyped is because a little thing, a small film, you might have heard of it, came out
Matrix.
earlier this year called The Matrix. Yes.
Yeah. I was gonna bring up that at the end of my preamble, but yeah, go on.
Right, and it just kind of sucked the oxygen out of the room. I think for Star Wars hype, I think because like that actually changed the conversation about action cinema. So Star Wars coming out,
yeah.
Star Wars coming out just kind of drained out that. But then I never got into the space of Star Wars fandom. But I remember enjoying the film as it was, as at age 14. But yeah, I could see why people really hate this movie. And like I admit it, most of the hate of the movie come from red letter media coalescing and concentrating, over a decade of hate at that point into one super video that just eviscerated the franchise. And when they can debate if you think red letter media, those guys have good analysis on the movies or if they operate in bad faith and so on and so forth. It was big enough to get screenings. Like that review was viral. That was like the first time you get a sense of a review could be viral. A review that come at over like about a decade later after the movie and so on and so forth. And then that was like weird fallout from this movie being so unpopular as it was at the time. If you ever see a documentary called People versus George Lucas, that's the first time I get a sense of how crazy Star Wars fans are. Like Star Wars fans are bananas. This is ridiculous. But yeah, so on and so forth. And it just built this interesting legacy of our film. I don't know if I'll look back on this on the same way I look back at, say, Batman and Robin, where I might soften up on it over the years. Not sure. I'm not that kind of guy, but I just remember it being fine. It has good action. Plot was kind of straightforward and blah, but again, because I was not a super Star Wars fan anyway, it was kind of non-starter for me. You're just here for the pretty lights, and that's it. Whatever. Very good.
Yeah. Right. So before I get to my notes, right? So I'll just wrap up my preamble, right? So yeah, so when the Phantom Menace came out, I was on the hype train. I saw it because when it came to summer blockbusters, I used to go and see these things, right? That's why I saw Batman and Robin. That's why I saw Mortal Kombat Annihilation, right? Cause they're big, the summer stuff, go cinema,
Windsor.
watch, for 2 hours, right? Windsor,
Yes.
go there and
Yeah,
see that.
Windsor.
That's what I used to do, right? But it's interesting though, looking back, right, that in a decade, right, where we had so many big summer blockbusters, right? 1999 was the year where we finally got a new Star Wars movie, right?
You're right.
So, for me, I would go and see any big summer blockbuster, right? Even whether they suck, like Wild Wild West, or they didn't, like The Matrix, you know what I mean? I took in the Phantom Menace, right? And I enjoyed for what it was, right? But
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
I was
Yeah.
young. I just sort of like, I think the reason why is because again, I did not grow up in the era of the original trilogy, so I
Exactly.
didn't know
Yeah.
about the influence about it till years afterwards, right? So this literally was like, oh, I am getting to experience what these older fans experience, right? So I could understand how the older fans felt, or not imagine how they felt when they saw this thing for the first time, right? But if you feel a newbie to this, it's like, yeah, you know what I mean? But then as you got more content over the years, like, yeah, right? Right? But in terms of that, right, even though I consume a lot of Star Wars content, I would say over the past 2 decades, right, I'm a fan, but I'm not a super fan, right? I can't tell you about this book and this reference in the movie was reference. No, I don't know these things. I'm just going off of the major movies, some of the major shows, and that's pretty much it, right? Also, just lastly, mid to late 90s was a really interesting period when it comes to franchise-based blockbusters, right? So
Yeah.
if it wasn't like a video game adaptation, it was a TV adaptation. It was some kind of franchise reboot, right?
Well,
Like, I mean, we had
the
GoldenEye, we
90s.
had one second, like we had GoldenEye, we had Lost in Space, we had Wing
Right.
Commander. Anybody remember
Right.
Wing Commander? I went
Yeah.
cinema to see that shit. It was garbage, whatever. The Avengers, I stayed home. I did not watch it. I still haven't seen it to this day.
Right.
Wild Wild West, I mentioned before, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it was only a matter of time when you really think about it that Lucas would say, okay, before the decade come to an end, before people start freaking out about Y2K, let me drop episode 1 and all, yeah. Boom.
Well, no, I mean, he always had the plans. That was there.
Yeah.
The question is if, what he had to write or how you're going to write it and piece it together. Like, regardless how you feel about the prequel trilogy, I think it does a decent job of that world building. The original trilogy feels like messed up and bombed out, and now time for him to build the world as a prequel to tell that. And as to your point about the idea of remakes, yeah, the 90s was the first time they kind of test ground for a lot of remake stuff, right? Adam's Family, Brady Bunch, like it was just covering the grounds in terms of that conceit. But yeah, it was a strange period of stuff that they wanted to give a second chance to. So it fit into that workable conceit of nostalgia. And this is a general pop culture thing in nostalgia. I think we call it the 20, 40, 60 year cycle. Once something comes 20, 40, or 60 years, that's the perfect time to drop it. In the case of Star Wars, it was what, 30 years or 20 years? I can't remember the anniversary exactly.
Well, 20, yeah. Well,
Right.
it technically 22 because the first one came out in 77, but
Right.
20,
Right. So 20 years roughly, around that. So in terms of building up the hype for you to start back now, the whole point is to drop something around that time, right? This is why Mario was so popular last year. Yeah, 40 years roughly. Barbie, 60 years, right? That's why it's so popular. And it has built layers of that momentum now. Yeah, and he just knew what to time it, and it was huge. I can't, regardless how you feel about it, make a lot of money. Did well.
Yeah, it did. It was huge. I think
Yeah.
it was. I'm not sure if it won an Oscar, but I know it was nominated for visual effects.
But
I'm gonna talk about that.
That's the last point, is that it was a sea change in terms of how you make movies. Like, he was,
Yes.
regardless of how you feel about Lucas and Cameron do a good job with that. Right. All right. Well, speaking of Cameron, right, the year before, Titanic did monster in in the Oscars. So
Oh yeah.
it was all of that now. All of these little things was just coalescing. The thing is, for my generation, it wasn't because of them. It was because of the younger filmmakers, right? The Wachowski siblings. they're the reasons why it come to the, and to me, I look at the Matrix as that flashpoint. But Star Wars was a big flashpoint too, I think, in terms of like how those movies were made and why they were made the way they were. But that was not the direction end up being what the thing to change the paradigm of cinema for the next few years. But Lucas is there. He's still part of the material. You know, he was, I think, was undermined by a post-Matrix world, I would argue. But yeah, his movies were still influential. The other two sequels, regardless how you feel about them, were affected by that. Like if the Matrix did exist and change action cinema the way it did, he would have been a lot more. And people might have been a lot more receiving of Star Wars, I think, to be honest, because but you know, the Wachowski's just basically, you know, shatter the paradigm for a lot of people and say, look, you know, it had no looking back here. And Lucas felt like the dinosaur at that point, I think.
Yeah.
That's just my quick kind of like analysis of the past here. Anyway, but yeah.
And you know, as I brought up the Matrix now, it's so funny now because there's a Matrix trilogy.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, you know, you look at, as a George Lucas, look at me and my trilogy, which I was gonna say, hey, we have a trilogy too, you know? Boom.
Right.
We actually
Well,
gonna
no, I
put
mean,
out 2 and 3 a year after you drop your second film, bro.
Yeah, no, it's the envy of the past. So let's be clear about that. Like a lot of video games have cinema envy, and because the Matrix was really feeling like a halfway point of multimedia video game mixed with thing, and they're trying to make their own, you know, franchise in their own way. It was kind of like that. Like they make that workable comparison. Like a lot of people comparing the Matrix to Lord of the Rings, but I actually compare it to Star Wars, like in terms of like how it should look like in terms of a multimedia package. Yeah, again, that's from a money making standpoint and how you think about it. Anyway, that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's jump into Phantom Menace, right? So again, it's just thoughts on the film, not a breakdown of every single thing that happened, right? So one admirable thing about this show, right, compared to I'll put it like this, right? It's not nostalgia heavy like say The Force Awakens was, where even though I really enjoy Force Awakens, but it was more about, hey, remember episode 4, and this is why I love episode 4 so much. So we're gonna give you all these cues and all these callbacks. Episode 4 was so great, but we're doing it again, folks. But this one, the story is treated literally like the beginning of the story, right? We now being introduced to the world of Star Wars without being reminded of Luke and Darth Vader and so on, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, this is the series premiere, and it really does feel like one, right? And I appreciate the show for that, right?
No, yeah, it had that's what made the prequel trilogy work. It had a unique feel to it. It really felt like, all right, yes, this is the Star Wars universe, but look how ornate everything is. Just a lot of great designs, a lot of ideas. Everything involving Queen Amidala was great.
I'll talk about her in a bit, but yeah, you're right. The blending of VFX and practical effects,
right, great.
But starting off though, seeing it again after having not seen it after all this time, it takes a while to get there though. Early on in the first act in particular, there's some uncanny valley stuff. So there's like a scene, for example, right, where I'll call them the Roger droids, right? Yeah, those are the droids the Roger, right? Right.
Oh gosh, I forget the name of the droids. The settlers, I want to say the colonists.
I can't remember the name of them.
Yeah, that's
sorry, folks. Yeah, but there's a moment, right? So this is where we are introduced to Qui-gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson. You know, who didn't become the Taken, you know, Liam Neeson that we know now. You know, he was the Rob Roy. You know, if you know, you know, he was the Rob Roy Liam Neeson, right? Ewan McGregor was really interesting too because even though we didn't get the film in cinema, you know, in Trinidad, I saw it on cable and I fucks with it. Trainspotting, right? So this movie, like he like we went from him being this heroin addict in a great movie, by the way. Trainspotting is the shit, right? And then he becomes Obi-Wan. It's like dog, you know what I mean? And yeah, in a strange way, we kind of like when it comes to Obi-Wan, it's kind of funny that we think about Ewan McGregor more than Anthony Guinness, right? It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny when you think about it, right? But
that's his character now, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a moment like you know, with when they're about to fight, you know, the Trade Federation guys or whatnot, right? Yeah.
Trade Federation.
Right.
Trade Federation droids, yeah.
Right. So there's a point where you see this C-3PO character. It's
a 3PO droid, yeah.
Yeah, it's a droid. It's
where's call those droids? I forget the name of basically it's a translation droid. Okay, I forget 3PO type of droid. Okay, I forget my stuff.
I'm sorry to write. Yeah. That is a practical, you know, well, that is, you know, that is practical, right? The C-3PO, right? Yeah. But when there's a moment where...
Protocol droid,
that's it, right? Yeah. But when it walks past the droids, the Roger droids, you see the difference. You see this looks real. This is not real, and you see it's
I
like,
mean, at the time,
oh, you know,
at
you
the
know,
time, look, I will admit, it aged like milk, because especially watching
yeah.
it in high definition.
Which
Means
is
like
what
watching.
I did. So when I see like, ooh,
Right. They didn't upgrade it as
ah,
well as they couldn't. Because CG in particular, is really bad at doing that. This is why Star Trek: The Next Generation has a reasonably decent upgrade to HD, but a lot of DS9 and Voyager can't really turn to HD well, because by that time they switched to CG now. CG is by far the hardest to upgrade, from what I understand. And yeah, so Star Wars will be hard pressed, because that stuff not looking good. Yoda's design is that, right? Yoda, you notice he's the puppet look in this. They switch
yeah.
him out.
But near
And,
the end, it's I assume it's CG because you see him standing and
right, and so on
doing
and
the
so forth.
walk and whatnot, and he
Yeah,
looks blatantly CG, right? But
yeah,
give it credit where credit is due, right? This is one of the few shows I can remember that came out in '99, where it's like, look, we are at a time now, we are nearing the end of the decade. Let's really go hard on visual on CG. Let's do that, right? Let's
yeah.
have numerous scenes, and George Lucas admittedly went wild. It's like, I could do it now because we have the technology now. So it's like, I just gonna throw
Yeah.
CG at you, right?
Well,
So
he
it's
did
like
this. He did this when he released. He did this when he released the original
the
trilogy.
old trilogy. Yeah, he just
And
add a few things in.
no, but he had some stuff was alright. Like, you had a few little creatures in the background for episode 4, whatever it is. But he had this whole ridiculous like performance sequence in the Jabba Palace in episode 6.
In Return of the Jedi, which
That was dumb.
I kind of hate.
Yeah,
I hate it.
terrible.
It's trash.
Absolutely
The
terrible. Yeah,
song
real
is
trash.
horrible.
Agreed.
The female creature singing is
Yeah,
oof,
rubbish.
what is this? What is
So
this? Right?
they I mean, look, LucasArts is LucasArts. They're gonna LucasArts, but ultimately, that stuff is maybe for the net good, in the sense of just uh thinking about it like that, or doing that conceit as it is. It's fine, because you gotta have the mistakes now, as they say. But nah, it's almost always a bad look.
Yeah, but I will say though that when you get deeper into the show, the mixture of CG and practical effects they work. They blend a lot better. But like early on though, and because I watch it in HD, but it's like, oof, this looks bad, right? Also just one big WTF moment in the film though. So in the fight scene with Qui-gon and Obi-Wan against the droids, right? So it's a
Yeah.
moment where you see what they call droidicars, right? So it's the
Right.
ones
Yeah.
that kind of roll and then they fire, right? And literally, like Jedi somehow have the speed force though,
Yeah, the
because
super speed. Yeah.
before they even like
And they
hit
never
them,
use it again.
yeah, the speed of shoot. I'm like, what? Like, I swear, like this was like the first time. Swear to God, Ricardo, that I noticed this. I watched
Yeah.
it like 3 times before. I never noticed that.
Yeah,
And
they
I'm
had
like,
a super.
what?
They decided to just run away. Super speed wise, they never use it again.
And
I forget who make
nobody has ever brought this up. Like nobody ever
made
questioned
fun
why.
of that. I forget who made fun of that. I think it's them fellas from Australia. They made a whole funny about how they'll just never do. They never do this. They have this one trick once ever. That's it. So
Yeah.
it's
And I feel one of them too is like I just find it looks so goofy the first few times, well, the few times where you see it, Obi-Wan just doing like these like Van Damme splits in the air, so like he
yeah.
kicking people, he holding the lightsaber, like, oh, that no, that look goofy as hell, right? As far as like the marketing of the show goes, right? Like one of the key things that was struck still to me was Queen Amidala, right, who was played by the exceptional Natalie Portman, right? I remember like her just being all over the marketing for this, right? And especially language that says, "I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war." Right? I remember that from the first trailer. I'll never forget that. I was watching that trailer on Real Player, right? Kids ask their parents, right? If you know, you know. But it's two things. It's the costume design and the makeup and hairstyle. And there's something about that face paint that she has on. Very Oriental inspired, of course, right? There's the geisha
Right.
look and whatnot, right?
All right. So
There's something about that look that always draws me into it. Like, I love that look though. I could tell, like, maybe even up to this day, like, if there's some Star Wars cosplay or something like that, yeah, some chick gonna be dressed like Amidala. I don't blame it. It's a great look. Yeah.
So Star Wars always had that problem, right? The whole Orientalism thing a little bit. Like the two aliens, they really look like Asians. Remember the two guys? You know,
Oh,
they
right,
look
for the the Trade Federation.
yeah,
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 they
stuff like
meant
that.
to like the sound, the sound Japanese, but
Right,
oh,
right.
by the way, going back to practical effects, right? The oh gosh, by the animatronics for those two, by
Yeah,
oof, awful.
yeah,
Like the mouths moving kind of out of time, and they're like, we need. What is going on here? We need to address, the emperor. Sorry, not the emperor. We need to address Darth Sidious about this. And he
right.
talking like blatantly Japanese, like, oof, like stop it now, like stop it, whatever, right? But yeah, but back to Amidala, outfit look great. And there's even like a nice piece of diversion that they do here where somebody else actually plays the queen, right? And I didn't even notice till like watching the show, right? Keira Knightley though actually plays the fake Amidala, because there's this subplot involving, well, what you see later on, which I'll get into, with the real queen himself, right?
Right.
Played by
And it's
Natalie,
and then
and
yeah,
and
Kira
her
Knightley's in the
handmaiden.
background.
Right. Well, she have a handmaiden. No, that's
Right.
Kira's character
Kira Knightley, yeah,
playing the
Kira
queen.
Knightley.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay, that's
yeah, yeah.
cool. And even back then, I was like, that's nice. I like this. I like this. I like this. Right.
Right.
So let me talk about Naboo for a sec, right? So on
Oh
Naboo,
boy.
right? So this is
Oh
where
boy. What
Qui-Gon
is
and
this?
Obi-Wan flee
Yeah.
after the
Yeah.
whole battle or whatnot, right? So they run into arguably
Yeah.
the most divisive character in all of Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Jar Jar Binks. Mocapped by Ahmad Best. I don't know what Ahmad is up to right now, but
No, well,
dude,
he
despite the
doing.
fact that we hate the character, dude, salute to you, dude. You did your thing, bro.
No, no, you do your thing because he is playing a Jedi. No, he wasn't thing. He wasn't
He was an Obi-Wan, right? No.
Obi-Wan no, not Obi-Wan. He was in a Mandalorian in a flashback episode where he rescued. He's the one who saved the. No, he saved one of the children. I think he didn't Obi-Wan or anything. Uh, but yeah, he do anything now. He plays a Jedi. Um, he's still somewhat proud of his work as thing. Yeah, I think he was in Mandalorian. I think he saved the child. He saved Baby Yoda. I think so. I'm looking it up now. Right, Kelleran Beck apparently. Right, but yeah. Yeah, I remember watching this episode. Like, wait, I know about Best Shred. Like, what? Yeah, he went through it, right? He kind of, a lot of. From what I understand, he got a lot of shit. Him and
Yeah.
oh gosh, the boy who played young Anakin.
Or Jake Lloyd.
Jake Lloyd,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they camp out in front of the house and all kind of nonsense. And like, again, Star Wars fans are kind of trash. But yeah, from what I understand, he had suicidation at some point, and little things like that, and all these things add up. And yeah, look, it's not a good look because it really felt like one of those. Why is this character designed like this? Why is he talking like this? It really felt like one of those like black caricatures, mommy stuff. A lot of people just pointed
Yes.
that out, and it felt like that. It looked like that. It felt like that. I halfway on it, I get it. But to me, if anything, at best, it's more not intentional, but mostly tone deaf. Like, I don't really go and put George Lucas there. Think George Lucas is some big secret racist or anything like that. Like, you had a black wife for the better part of 20 years. Well, is it that? It's tone deafness. It's really his influence from earlier material, and that's what's pulling into the designs. I mean, yeah, okay, you could have probably think that out a little better, and modern Star Wars would think that out better, to be honest. But yeah, the character annoying and obnoxious, and people, I could understand why I hate this character because the character is really, really a problem. At best, take a
Yes,
lot of
he is.
shit. Take a lot of shit, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd love to see what the legacy of this character, because the character has never been enjoyed. Like, I don't know anybody who turning around and defending this character at all. They'll defend Ahmed Best, of course. They never defend this character and never see it. They have a bunch of dumb jokes about him still. He's still hated by the older set, the older fanboy set, who now is, well, my age and a little older, Gen Xers, who would have been like, them is the ones who would have been lining up to watch the movie, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's interesting how this legacy of this character, and what he is, what that says about the fandom going forward now, because yeah, it's 20 years of vitriol. He's the filter for that. Yeah, then that's interesting to watch. But yeah, Ahmed Best, the man do you think he's still a solid actor. I think he's do voice work. I can't remember what voice work he did recently, but he that's what I remember off the top of my head. But that's about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Okay. But that character being in it brings up what I think is the main issue with the Phantom Menace. Why it was what it was, for better or for worse, right?
Right.
So you know what, like when you know, for the first time when you see him, right? You know, like it's a character that you kind of grow to hate, right? Like I just seen him there, I like, okay, he's just gonna be this character to show up, you know, once or twice or whatnot. But the man is like prominent in the show. Though, like what?
Yeah.
Like even back then, I was like, why are we seeing this guy so much, right? So you see him for the first time with the weird outfit and the me says stay and the X squeeze me and all that kind of stuff. And you know, it's like, all right, it's Star Wars, it's a PG film, so you know you had to have some goofy alien for the kids to laugh at, right?
Right.
But the issue with him, for me, right, is again, you know, it's just that he had a large role to play in this, right? Not even like R2D2 or C3PO or Chewbacca, right? Side characters now from the old trilogy had so much screen time compared to this guy, Dread, you know what I mean? And it gets even worse because like early on, just going back to you know visual effects and the uncanny valley stuff. The earlier moments with him and Qui-gon and Obi-Wan, they look rough. Like it's like oof, you know what I mean? But later on, it's like, yeah, okay, I kind of get used to it now, right? But I won't lie. Yeah, he annoys me every time I see this film. He annoys me, right? But yeah, but I'll get to why his inclusion is there, and you know that's the overall problem with the show, right? But moving on, right? What was interesting too, I actually forgot this, but R2D2 is actually introduced for the first time in quotes, right? Can you get this nice little dogfight involving
Right, and
our
then all the other
heroes,
all the other droids get killed except for him. He survived.
you know, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you go to Tatooine now, he actually meets C3PO, right, when he's first introduced, right?
Right.
And going back to
Right. So this
practical
was the
effects,
first.
right?
This was the first big controversial thing. That
Okay.
Anakin is the creator of
Anakin
C-3PO.
built C3PO, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That is like, oh,
People, I know real people hated this, like absolutely hated this.
yeah, it's nostalgia, but done in the most misguided way, right? But
Right,
to get the
right.
positive out of the way, though, a positive. I love the incomplete design of C3PO here. I love like with the wires and the bits and pieces. Even drop a nice line. My parts are showing. My goodness.
Right.
I love that. That's great. But again, are you telling me Anakin, we'll get into in a bit, you're telling me he is the one who built C3PO?
Well, it's not
And
that,
he never brought this up in any of the older films, so why bring this up here?
Well, it's not like a big
building.
deal. It's not like a big deal because it's just a protocol droid he built. It's not like C-3PO some unique design or anything like that. We saw a protocol droid earlier. We know protocol droids exist. He just built a protocol droid.
I know, but
the point is,
you know, it's the same voice now. It's the same Auntie Daniels now. So like,
I know,
it's the same guy. So why? You know, that's the problem.
No. Again, from a world building standpoint, it's not a big deal. People issue was that it didn't seem to be referenced in episode 4, 5, or 6 at all. Like he didn't meet him on Cloud City or whatever it is. I don't get into the details, but I get the point, right? But the idea is that he just built a protocol droid. It didn't need to be C-3PO. It could be another protocol droid. But the point is, it's a setup. Look how smart Anakin is. He's smart. That's it.
I get. I understand where it comes from, right?
Right. Well, another controversial thing, Watto. Right.
Yes.
A lot of people point out.
Boy, here's the thing, huh? Like we could talk for days about how the Trade Federation sound like blatant Japanese stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
But dog, Watto dread, like dog, it's stereotypical Italian dread, like, and it's like this bug-looking guy is like, you know, he's my slave, and
people thought
this Jedi mind tricks could work on me. Like,
what? A lot of people thought it was a Jewish stereotype. Actually, that is what more people.
Jewish, right? Right. Well, I was thinking Italian with the A's and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. Jewish, actually, you're right.
Right. He's a hustler, and so and so. And then, this is where the logic of the plot started to fall apart. Right. Like two things. One, he had to buy one slave. Why? Two, he could have easily figure out a way to get around the deal involved with the ship. He could have sell the other ship and get a cheaper ship. However.
Yeah, I mean, Qui-gon ought to be, you know, but you're right. Qui-gon could have make a much smarter call than that, right?
Right.
But yeah. Watto was anyhow. But for me, another reason why I wanted to see the show specifically was that Maldred. So for me, I didn't even know who Ray Park was. Right, it's only years later I realized that he was in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. He was the stunt double for Raiden. You know what I mean?
Right.
And shout out to Double Toasted because they poke fun of that. I was like that.
Well, the thing is, I only got wind of him with him as a person because when X-Men came out the following year, he was told.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, oh shit, that was
Yeah, but right, exactly, because of
Right.
Phantom Menace, I knew who he was
Right.
when X-Men came
And
out,
he
right?
was by far the biggest highlight of the trailer. When that trailer came out, it's like, who is this
Yes.
dude? And then you see him like body and you see the second lightsaber come out to the other side, like, oh shit, I'm dual-sided lightsabers. That's pretty awesome.
That was
And then
hard.
that's real hard. So he was the
Yeah.
highlight of this in this. And it had a lot of great promo material leading up with him. Like it had
Yes.
this really, I forget which magazine it is. I don't look it up. But it had this really kick-ass poster. So this doesn't actually happen. But it's because it's in the desert. But you have Obi-Wan fighting Darth Maul in the desert, which didn't happen, right? They fought later. But
Yes.
it's a promotional poster showing Obi-Wan in the air, clashing towards Darth Maul in the air. And it's a great badass. I had to look it up. I had to find it because it was in a magazine somewhere. But I remember my cousin having it. I remember seeing this in this promo cousin. I forget where this was, but I had to look it up, George. But yeah, it had a lot of great promo material with him in it. Like a ton of great stuff. Talking about how lightsabers are made, kyber crystals, and how you have a double lightsaber and why, and so on and so forth. And yeah, that started that real hype of people.
Yeah, but yeah, just like you do, when I saw that that face paint, I was like, all right,
face paint.
Yeah. Again, probably cosplay to this day, right? Looking back at it now, I wish they did not spoil the double lightsaber. Like, if we had seen this for the first time, think about it, right? If diehard fans, right, and newbies like us back in '99 saw that shit for the first time, we would have went nuts. We would have had nerdgasms, right? This like double lightsaber. What? We would have gone nuts too, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then somebody would come and say, oh, well, you know, in this novel it was mentioned that double lightsabers are like we never saw this in live action though, right? So it's like that, right? Also, I like, on a side note, right? I like that in the first duel between Maul and Qui-gon, right? In the desert, right? I like that he's using his lightsaber in the traditional sense, right? With one side being active, right?
Right. So you don't know.
Yeah, which I thought was right. So that's why when I saw that moment, I was like, God, the trailer shouldn't have spoiled that, man. It would have been a great review, right? Also, on a side note, I like that after the fight, Qui-gon states that he has no idea who Maul was, right? So in other words, at this time where Star Wars began, Jedi knew little about the Sith, or at least when we go to the Jedi Council, is like they kind of know about the Sith, but they thought that the Sith has been pretty much extinct for years, right? So it's like that. I thought that was really interesting. I like that.
This hint at the first hint at the downfall of the Jedi, because they keep talking about the balance of the Force. Where if the balance of the Force is to be reclaimed, and all is the only ones who's showing up, that means you balance it towards the dark side. That's the idea. But that's one. Two, the new show that's coming up is kind of controversial.
Or the Acolyte, yes.
Right, that coming up, showing up, right, because that's supposed to be occurring around 100 years prior to this film, or 100 years prior to Luke and them, I can't remember.
All right.
So that's a little piece of controversy and continuity. Again, the type of people who gonna have a meltdown over this is usual suspects. But I want to see how they're gonna address it or make the conceit. It's not a big deal. I don't think so. But yeah, that is where that come from. Whatever.
Right, exactly. So exactly 32 minutes into the movie, I counted it, we are finally introduced to Anakin Skywalker, aka I'm a person and my name is Anakin. That's a line in the film, folks. That's a line, right? I have to address this, folks. I have to address this. Because when Attack of the Clones came out back in 2002, this shit we're gonna talk about what we're gonna talk about now weirded me out, right? So shout out to Jake Lloyd, right? Do your thing, bro. Do your thing. Do your thing, right? So Anakin, the actor and the character, right, is 9 when he meets Padme, who would have been roughly 17 or 18, right?
Nah, she's supposed to be like 14 here. She's supposed to be 14 here.
They didn't say that though. That's the thing. So, all right. So for me, right? I am reading this in terms of Natalie's actual age, right?
Remember, no, right. No, Natalie's age she's like 17, I think, at the time, or 16.
Right. Well, let's say for now 17, right? So
remember there's a little film.
Right. Remember there's a little film, a classic film in my opinion, called The Professional, which came out, which we got theatrically, right? Where she played 12, which I think she was 12 years old, right? But like in real, she was 13 or something like that, right? So I just going off for that. 4 years passed, so she's 17, right?
Right.
And Attack of the Clones now, 10 years passed, right? So Anakin is for now, let me just say 19, right?
Right.
And Padme is in her late 20s, right?
Right.
I'm not saying in Attack of the Clones they can't be in love. And I'm not saying that Anakin won't find Padme hot. I mean, I don't blame him. It's not the Portman, right?
Right.
But still, Padme met the dude when he was 9, though.
Right.
That is creepy, dog. Like,
Well,
wouldn't it have made sense? Just on this, wouldn't it have
Yeah.
made sense, right? Just going back to it. And I have to blame Lucas for this, right? 'Cause you know, you want to make it your way, right? Wouldn't it have made sense to just bringing Hayden Christensen from the very beginning? He could have been a teenager. And
I have
she,
no idea.
like, they're roughly the same age. So when they grow up now in Attack of the
I
Clones,
have
you know,
no idea
but
how that would have worked. But you can see, you don't know how he was thinking. And the thing is, I think everybody thought that he would have leveraged into Drake Lloyd now going forward. So I don't know. I have no idea.
But here's the speculation, right? But I'll before I get the speculation, right? But you know, in terms of like casting Hayden from the get go, he would have been, in other words, into the context of the show, right? And what they try to tell it is Darth Vader's, you know, origin story, right? He would have been around the same age that Luke Skywalker was when we first saw him in A New Hope, right?
Again,
and he could still sell the whole boyish naivete that he had, because that's the idea. He childish. That's why he was easily swayed into the dark side. That's what he's saying. That's the point. He was young.
You're right in the story,
right?
Like,
right.
Yeah, you're right in the story. I get what you're trying to say, but you're right in the story. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The idea was.
I'll wrap up this part here. Sorry, I'll wrap up this part, right? So, I don't know if it was bad casting or bad writing. I don't know, but I feel the reason why they cast Jake in retrospect, and this goes to the problem that I have with the show here, is the audience. You want to cater to the kids in the audience, right? You know, you want to tap into that kid demographic, right? And it's the 90s, right? I mean, who wasn't going? I mean, kids like myself, right? Even though I was 14, whatnot. Yeah, that's what we do. We go and see movies, right? So I could understand from George's perspective. Yeah, I want to have a child here, you know, so the kids in the audience could enjoy the film, because kids saw the old trilogy and enjoyed it when they were kids, right? So yeah, we have a kid there, right? But into the story, they could have cast somebody older, right? But again, it's something so creepy about the fact that Padme is older than this kid, and she met him when she was 9, right? There's a point, right? I'll close this, right? The first question the man asks the girl is, "Are you an angel?"
Right.
I mean, this is creepy. It's creepy. Sorry, it's damn creepy. But Ricardo, agree or disagree, right? But
it don't bother me as much as, you know, other people. Apparently, people had an issue with that. I didn't as much as other people. Like, whatever, time passed. They just hinted at this thing that's gonna happen. The stuff in episode 2 is worse in terms of, like, from a writing story perspective. I don't know if it's me being some kind of miscreant in this way, but like, it didn't bother me as much as other people. In that sense, I get what you're saying. But yeah, you see, the problem is what they wanted to set up is the plausibility of Anakin being trained. That was the idea, because he's so young now. It's like, well,
right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because if you're too young, once you're too old, and that was the whole thing now. So it's like, all right, you had somebody had a royal vow to you. But if he was already like an adult, like in his teens, it would have definitely be too old. So that was the idea, or the stretch. I don't know. So that's about it.
Okay. I don't know, right? But anyway, moving on, right? So there is a rather intriguing point dropped, right? There's this short conversation between Qui-gon and Anakin's mom, right? So she states that Anakin had no father. So like literally she's like Mary and she just gave birth and boom, right?
Right.
And for me, like, look at it now, it kind of sets up this sort of Jesus Christ dynamic with Anakin, right? Not the Antichrist, right? If you know your Antichrist horror films like The Omen or Rosemary's Baby, usually Satan is the father, right? That's they set up Satan is the father, right? Whatever, right?
So that's the premise. He's either Antichrist or evil Jesus, something akin to that, right?
Yeah. And in a way, you could kind of see this as a way it tells the Jedi would believe that, oh, you know, Anakin will bring balance to the Force, right? You know, because he was destined to do so, right? And that leads to a plot device that I imagine, again, I don't know the comics, I don't know the novels, right? But I imagine for a lot of diehard fans, had a lot of them like, what?
Or the
midi-chlorians.
Yeah, people hated this. Real people hated this.
Here's the thing, so for 22 years, right? From 77 to now, right? Everybody thought that the Force was something spiritual, right? It's like, oh, if you tap into it, if you really tap into it, you could do all these otherworldly things, right? Now is about
Right.
certain
So
type of blood cell, and
yeah, no, they
if
come
it
back.
reacts
Right. So
to
so
external
yeah,
forces, so
they come
if
back.
it
They come
reacts
back full circle.
enough, then. But I will make the argument though the older shows, and in particular like the Bad Batch, which I mentioned earlier, that address the whole midi-chlorian thing a lot better,
Right.
right? Where it's like everybody has them, but it's just a matter of how they react to this external force, right? Whether it's spiritual or whatever you think it is, right? But yeah, back then I like, even when I saw it for the first time, I was like, wait, so you see, telling me all the stuff that Obi-Wan and you and Luke them is doing because of blood cells?
Yeah.
What?
No, right. So at the
Like,
time, people
no, man.
they come back. They come back full circle on this. Like
Yes.
they say, well, it's more like a predilection towards skill. Like okay, this show did it. Addressed it. What do they call it? Ahsoka.
Ahsoka? Yes.
Ahsoka addressed it, right? Where it's like, well, it have a predilection towards it on the Force, and the midichlorians is just a good rule of thumb, right? It's no different from like how you think about something like IQ or something like that, right? It's that. It don't mean things set in stone. Things could be different. How things could play out or change, and so on and so forth. That's how I see it. Like but to be fair, at the time people hated it because it really felt like, oh well, it's just this hard count, this hard number. They put a number on it now.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake. And they say, oh well, you have even a higher count than Yoda, and so and so.
Yeah.
That bullshit. And
And,
well,
and,
you could
and
say
sorry, it just makes you like, when you hear "May the Force be with you," it's like, well, like now, like, remember, spiritual. Now that's what people roll with. It's something spiritual. Now you tell them, oh, it's something physical. Now,
no.
like,
In
what?
defense of that, right? You could say, well, this is also a sign of the Jedi in decline, right? Because now they care about this kind of like narrow quantification of the situation, and they're trying to mechanize it almost now. That's how I think about it. Like again, this is in retrospect defense of the material now. Like, oh, the Jedi is in decline because look how you know scholastic everything is, and everything is more academic in terms of the Force, and you should be more open with the ideas and so on and so forth.
Oh,
And
okay.
this
So,
is what
they
this is
don't
what
buy
led to
into
the
the
downfall.
spiritual aspect of it. They have to
Exactly. They
quantify
rejected.
it.
They
Oh,
rejected.
okay.
They rejected their roots. Now they think they could have
Mhm.
science their way out of it, or at least have a pseudo scientific aspect of the thing, and that's the sign of decline almost now. Like that. I don't know. Look, that might be selling George Lucas too much. He overselling him a little bit, but I felt that's how I thought about it in retrospect. Again, this is not me super hating on the franchise, but yeah, at the time people hated this. This was such a bad call. Like
Yeah,
getting
I
into that,
remember. Yeah, I
getting
remember
into
people
that type
laughing
of
at us, like laughing
yeah, yeah.
in an ironic way, of course, about this, right?
Yeah,
Being
yeah,
flippant
getting
about it.
getting getting into that type of reduction is almost always a bad call. Almost
Yeah.
always. Yeah.
Right. But anyway, but yeah, Anakin has over 20,000, higher than Yoda's, and they actually see it. It's higher than Yoda's, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
I guess
yeah,
that make him God or something. I don't know. But yeah, it
yeah,
was
yeah.
weird the first time you hear it, right? Anywho, one big sell of the movie, but it wasn't the reason why I wanted to. Well, I should say it's the reason why I wanted to see it on big screen, but I didn't want to go out of my way to see the show because of this. The pod race scene, right? AKA Star Wars NASCAR. That's what I'm gonna call it, right? And in case you're wondering, right? So I never played Episode 1 Racer for PC, Mac,
I
Nintendo
I
64.
I
I
had
never
this
played the
game.
game.
I had this
Okay,
game for PC,
how was it? It was
and it's
good,
a
right?
fucking awesome game. This was a great racer. This game was amazing. It's a
All
great
right.
game. Amazing game.
All right. Okay. Well, now I know actually. I never looked up any reviews or like, I never looked up any reviews, like
I
retrospective
I
reviews
also
of that
had
game.
I also had the episode 1 game for the PC, the episode 1 game, where you get to play as characters throughout the game. That's a pretty decent game too.
Okay.
So you get to
Okay.
play, you even get to play as Darth Maul at some point. Like, all right, wood, this hard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Weird. Yeah.
yeah.
But just to touch on games quickly, right? So when it came to Star Wars games, right? I either whether fly a X-wing or use a lightsaber. That's why I gravitated to shit like Jedi Knight or
Right,
Rogue Squadron or Knights of the Old Republic, right? I never
right,
finished that
right, right,
game for
right.
some other reason. Never finished it up. Forgive me, whatever, right? But yeah, I didn't want to drive pods, bro. Like I don't know, it just wasn't for me. Like when it came to racing, is Ridge Racer, shit like that, not Star Wars pod racing. Anyway, right? But yeah, but with all the issues that I mentioned with the kid, well, basically it's just the kid-friendly tone of it that was an issue for me, right? That's why you have Jar Jar Binks. That's why you have, young Anakin, right? It's to cater to the kids, right? Um, But I will admit, though, the pod race scene is entertaining AF,
Yeah.
though. It starts off kind of goofy where you see like this alien and Texas sounding commentators, right? And it's funny because we grew up on Sesame Street, so it had that kind of two-headed monster vibe to it, right? But as much as you could see that this scene is filler, this is really where you see Anakin's force-based mindset put to good
That's the
use,
point,
right? And
yeah.
even
That's the point
Qui-Gon
that-
tell them,
Yeah.
may the
Because
force be with you, and he drops it for the first time in the film too. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. The whole point is that, well, he's the only human racing. Like, how
Yes,
he's doing that?
yes.
He had to be force
Yeah.
sensitive. That's the only explanation.
But lastly about that scene, though, what makes it work though, like just in general though, is just the execution of it too. But the sound design, boy, my
Yeah.
God, boy,
You know,
this sound amazing
again,
though. Especially with the motor, when you hearing that though. I was like, what? What's wrong though?
Yeah, no,
It's
look
still
good, yeah.
goofy, yeah, like with the aliens and when they blow up and stuff like that though. But in terms of pacing,
what's his name? Sabulba. Sabulba was the other guy, yeah.
oh, the one who
He's the main guy.
the one who kind of walking, right? The antagonist here, right?
Yeah,
But
the main
yeah, in
antagonist.
terms of just the execution, though, the how the scenes are framed and all that kind of stuff is magnificent. Though it's basically the chariot scene from Ben Hur. That's clearly what George Lucas is drawing inspiration from, and just like that scene, yes, it is amazing, right? But I wouldn't say that was the reason why I saw it in cinema. But even back then, I watch it now. Yeah, it's a great scene. So agree to disagree.
Yeah, no, it again, do you think George don't care about like us? You realize he only care about just playing with toys more than a story per se, right? And that's how I just see it like that. It's just he get excuse to just show off the shit and he do it. That's it. Pod racing's kind of cool. Is basically the Ben Hur chariot scene, but teched up in the future. Space Ben Hur. Do that. That is all. That is it. Straight up, just
Yeah.
do that. You wanted to do that.
Exactly. All right. So I believe this was our first introduction to the planet of Coruscant, right?
Right.
Concept and set design wise, I think it is a brilliant idea to have it be one giant city. Like when I saw that, like I still to this day, I just think that's such a perfect idea to have this whole planet be one big city. Dude, that is excellent.
Yeah,
in
it's a
my opinion, right?
megalopolis, right? Yeah, it's a cool idea.
That's right. Mhm,
Great
yeah.
look. Great. Very rarely you'll see concepts like this in a different concept. It's like, yeah, the entire city is a city. Very good.
Yes.
You learn later about that. Like you see, it's not entirely that, but it's just like a kind of shell on the surface kind of thing, and they build on that.
Yeah, and especially in like episode 2 and 3 though, like you get some great scenes involving Coruscant though, like that chase scene in Coruscant in the beginning of episode 2, like I absolutely love. Like say what you want about 2, but just that beginning with the chase with Obi-Wan and Anakin though, chasing after the assassin, that was great. I love that, right? But anyway, stationed in Coruscant is Senator Palpatine, right? And here's the thing, again, because I wasn't versed in all things Star Wars, I remember I didn't see Return of the Jedi, right? I did not know that he eventually will become the Emperor as the master of Darth Vader. I just saw him as, I know it's implied, right? But I did connect the dots when I first saw it. But when I saw it again, it's like, it was right there, right? But that is a testament to how great Ian McDiarmid is as an actor.
All right, so to be fair,
I love how he nails. Let's talk quick. I love how he nails the Shakespearean tone of his voice. He has a way of how he talks. So, but it's the point that when he is playing the senator and eventually the supreme chancellor, right, and Darth Sidious, is like little inflections. It's like this little change, a tone of voice, though. But like when you listen close, like it's the same dude, but you could easily be fooled though in terms of just how different both characters are,
Yeah, so this is one of those, Lucas interfering with history things, right? So
okay.
So
they were supposed to be different people.
No, not like that. It's just how different they look in the time. So if you see them in the design of the character in the original Star Wars, he looked very different. The Emperor.
I think he looks much more frail, right? I think.
Well, they change up how he does look. Like when you see him for the first time in Empire, they use that thing. I forget what they did, but they use some dog eyes or something like that to like inverted dog eyes to make him look like more like a weirdo froggy kind of figure. But he don't look like that at all. When in the special edition where they re-release with Lucas re-editing most of the stuff and putting in the digital stuff, it's clearly closer to Ian McDiarmid, and they do that. And they retroactively do a bunch of changes. Now these things wouldn't have been that super noticeable only for the eagle eye fans to thing. But the only time he really notices is when they outright change the actor for Anakin with the Force Ghost stuff now, right? They went back to what do you call him, to oh gosh, Anakin live action actor now.
Hidden.
Hayden Christensen, right? But I forget who's the old guy when in the original trilogy.
Oh right, I forgot that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see all these little things. So these little design calls in retrospect. You keep saying they didn't think about it, but they didn't think about it after the fact anyway. All of this come after the fact, and this is a big problem. Like when I think about this kind of shit, this is exactly why I think the Bible is the way it is, because it's just a bunch of retroactive stuff, and then people forget what the truth was and how it was written in the first place anyway.
Uh-huh.
It's that bullshit. I mean, and that, by the way, that is literally true. And when you actually
you're right.
When you get into like when say Adam and Eve was written and that stuff, Adam and Eve was written after Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel was in terms of actual writing time. So you could say the Garden of Eden was a prequel story like Star Wars. It's like that.
Right. I got you.
So I think about it in that sense. And so on and so forth, right? This kind of modern pop culture mythology just end up playing out like in very similar fashions now. Because people just forget. Nobody just actually like track this stuff down unless you're an eagle-eye fan or you know what to look for. To remember, you'll just forget. It's like, oh yeah, right. That shouldn't that be a plot hole? It isn't, because they didn't think about it. That's what happened. This is a perfect example of that, the whole Ian McDiarmid thing, and everybody guessing whether or not it was supposed to be a surprise. But because you know retroactively 25 years later, it's not that big of a surprise, and it don't make a lick of sense. You see how weird it is, right? I remember my cousin was like, boy, but I really think he's the emperor, boy. He's the emperor. And I was like, well, that kind of obvious. Like, yeah. But I only get to see that in retrospect.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. And so on and so forth.
But in terms of him, basically, what he's doing in the show basically is to try to attain the title of Supreme Chancellor, right? You see where he takes it in episode 3, where he becomes the emperor and, he sets up the whole galactic empire. So I just love that about Palpatine, though. He just playing the role, though. He just pulling, pulling strings and whatnot, though. The man just playing shit behind the scenes, though. Just kind of watching everybody do their role. I love that, right? Mace Windu, though, first Black Jedi I have ever seen, though, and it's played by Samuel Jackson, that, right? And I find like it's funny in retrospect, but after you see like the Chappelle Show skit, what it is why it'll make you drunk, I'll make you fight, nigga, too, bitch. You know what I mean? Like how he just curse so much, right? But yeah, it like a Black Jedi, though, that is a big deal, right? You know what I mean?
So yeah, at the time, there's a whole theory that was supposed to be Tupac. I'm not sure if that's true, but if Tupac was still alive, when Tupac died, 97, right?
97, yeah. No,
right.
96,
right.
Yeah.
So somebody say how that was in the plan in the early phases, it was supposed to be Tupac Shakur. The early thing, and they had an idea for somebody like a Mace Windu.
I could understand from Lucas's mindset with casting. Oh, Tupac has a look about him. The look,
right?
The bullhead. Ooh, but
yeah.
No.
So that's what I think. That's more like an urban legend. To be fair, I don't think it was necessarily verified. If Tupac was also being Star Wars, but like I think so. But yeah, Sam Jackson was like a reasonably popular, kind of a popular actor at the time. Not like super popular like we know him now.
It's just really Pulp Fiction. It's just blew him up, eh?
Bring him back, right?
Years afterwards, you learn about he was in Jungle Fever and coming to America. Right. I found all those things after the fact. It's like when I heard about it for the first time, it's Pulp Fiction. It could not escape the show, even though it never came down to Trinidad. Never showed
his career,
never did.
Yeah, his career, but his career like was like super mega. But this was like a big thing for him, and he was a reasonably popular like black actor. Like he was one of those, right? Yes, he's an all-star, but he never.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, not mainstream prominence. Yeah, just yet. But I knew who he was. It's like, oh shit, he gonna be in this. Again, this is another. Some people think it a little tone deaf. Like white is that he was picked. They think it was a kind of cynical gambit in terms of getting a black actor. It's like, oh, they want black people to come and watch the show too. So on. So I don't think so. The whole purple lightsaber thing was also a kind of weird thing. Like that's one of those things they decided to break the law for. It's fine.
Yeah. Speaking of Jedi, though, it was cool back then and now actually seeing a younger Yoda, and I thought that was really cool, though. Like we're seeing a younger Yoda, and throughout this new prequel trilogy, you see him get older and whatnot, right? And then up to the point where in the previous trilogy, he's older and he's like the Muppet that we know and love, right? The scene where you have basically it's the Jedi Council talking to Anakin, right? always stood out to me, right? So is Yoda, how he comes off with the "How feel you? Afraid are you?" Right?
Right.
And then Anakin responds about how he misses his mom, right? And then, well, Yoda dropped one of the best quotes in the whole series. Fear is the part of the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Right.
That quote stood out to me the first time I heard it. It's still a powerful quote. And
Yes.
it just, because of how it foreshadows Anakin's feat, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
But the final line that I love, though, I sense much fear in you. That's it. End of scene. I
Yeah.
love that. Love that. That was Lucas actually writing there. I mean, he was throwing a lot of shit on the wall, seeing what sticks though. But when he sat down and really focused on the Darth Vader stuff, it's like, okay, right. So we're wrapping up here. So the third act is pretty solid for what it is, right? So Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Padme doing their thing, trying to capture the Viceroy. What is Viceroy Gunray, right? So he's I think he is the head of the Trade Federation, right? Jar Jar has his hands full because he's the general of this Gungan army and they're going up against the Viceroy's droid army.
Yeah.
Even back then to this day, his steady annoys me to no degree, right? But I don't know, just out of this third act, that was a scene that I never really cared for. But from a cinematic historical perspective, right? Yes, this is the moment where it was Lucas saying, "We in the future, folks, we can use CG to tell stories. Look, you're getting a big battle sequence. It's all CG. Even the backdrop of it. Swear to God, when I watch it, it looked like Windows 98 to the like when it starts off with
the same feel, that same feel.
green I was like, dog, this is Windows 98, dog. What is this? But not in a bad way, but it's just how it looks. It's like Windows 98, dog. But the entire sequence is CG. So again, from a historical perspective, it's like, yes, this is the future. Yes, this is the big deal. Yes, we will remember this is a part of history. But I really don't care about that scene at all, right? Sorry. Anakin even get a little moment to shine though because he in a fighter plane with R2 but it's kind of funny in retrospect though that Anakin is the one who take down the control ship that control the droids that the Gungan army try to wipe out. So like he blow up the core of it and he blow up the whole ship. And then all the droids is like shut down and everybody wins. Like really? Like what?
Yeah.
But sorry, all that shit cooler. But the main takeaway from all this is the duel between Darth Maul and the tag team of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Plus, as the doors open, dude have his own entrance music, Dread. Duel of
the Fates is a classic.
Swear to God, first time I hear it, I get chills in the way. Is when you hear that vocalize that song, you like, shit. You know what I mean? And you hear it in part when they play it in Revenge is Sith. I was like, oh gosh, that was when the Emperor had fought Yoda. I was like, oh, chills in the wind. But yeah, still to this day, it is one of the best compositions that John Williams have ever made for anything, right? Star Wars or otherwise, right? The horns, especially horns by that like when it goes the end or like it's the epicness of it alone. I love this, right?
What I find hilarious, two things is that all right, so the actual like fight, when that fight comes to a close, there's this part with this door that is closed super fast for some reason. Like the set people fuck this up. Was that intentional? That door closing way too fast, right? That cracked everybody up in the audience, right? But that come later,
but I remember you talk about it. But speaking of the vocalizer, right? I love that it kicks in just as Darth Maul shows off the double lightsaber. Again, in retrospect, I wish the trailers didn't spoil this because if we all saw this for the first time, nerdgasms, all of us would have lost our collective shits when that moment happened, right? Like when the vocals come out, like you see the it's like, oh my god, right? But anyway, right? The fight itself is so massively done, right? And many like many great fight scenes. Case in point, the Neo and Agent Smith fight in the subway. it has a 3-act structure, right? So
Yeah.
I love that the third act though in particular is quite clever. Or I should say the second act in particular, with these like ray shields that go off after a short period of time, right? And it separates all three of the fighters, right? I love there's this moment where like Qui-Gon just kind of sits in this kind of meditative pose, he's just kind of watching Maul, and Maul just kind of pacing,
Pacing back and
waiting
forth,
too.
yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that, right? And then what I love also with the ray shields is that like it's Maul and Qui-Gon, right? Like kind of face each other. So when everything kind of goes though, Maul and Qui-Gon fight, and then Obi-Wan steps in, he get blocked again because a ray shield come in. So yeah, he ended up watching Qui-Gon get stabbed right in the chest. It's like
Yeah.
shit, though. I mean, and even like when I saw it first, like, whoa, okay, like dog, you killed him, Andre? Like what? Again, you're young, you expected this thing to be all like, oh, the hero's gonna win, but it's like, nah, like we going back, not even going back to Empire Strikes Back. We going back to literally when Obi-Wan himself got killed in episode 4. Like, dog, people were dying this, right? I love that. And it's really a play on the Darth Vader fight with old Obi-Wan. That's really what it is, right? But yeah, when Obi-Wan now goes up against Maul,
yeah, it's a pretty good fight.
the fighting in this too, and I watched it carefully. I like dog Ewan McGregor doing
I know
fight.
a couple
Like,
people thought a people didn't like this because how overly choreographed it felt. But I thought to me that worked. That was like
badass.
yeah, I thought
like, in the
that whole
context of it,
sequence. Yeah.
Obi-Wan is pissed off. Trench.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
man just went in, blah 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 blah. He split Maul's lightsaber in half. I was like, God damn, son.
Yeah.
Right? And I love how it ends too, where like Obi-Wan ended up using the Force powers to summon Qui-Gon's lightsaber. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And he just basically used to slice the man in half, right? And
higher ground, the whole higher ground thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I have the higher ground now. Right.
Yeah.
I love just the framing of it though, where it's like a medium close up of Maul. You just see and you just see like this brief kind of blood spray. Just spray, not splatter. Spray. Remember, it's a PG. So you just see spray.
It's a laser blade. It's a laser blade. So that's
I was like, wood. I like this. Add a little blood. That's nice. And then when he falls, the split is like, right. Like, very, very samurai showdown. If you know, you know. If you know the game, you don't talk about it. I was like, right. I fucks with that. That's cool, right? And yeah, Qui-Gon delivers his final words basically to Obi-Wan, which is basically train Anakin because he's the chosen one, right? And here literally is where the Star Wars saga begins, right? So fun fact, right? As we wrap up, during the funeral pyro scene, right, where Qui-Gon is burnt, they play a variation of the same dirge that they played during Padme's funeral at the end of Part 3. At the same time when Padme had the funeral, where there was a funeral for Padme, that was where Darth Vader was born. Like literally, that's when he had the suit on and he broke out. He was like, no, which people laugh at, but at the time I was like, because the music is so mournful, I was like, this actually kind of worked though, even though the no is kind of hokey, but like, there's a tragedy of it all though, but I love it, right? It's a nice bit of dialogue between Yoda and Mace Windu, right? Where they try to figure out whether it was a Sith master or apprentice who killed Qui-Gon, right? Yoda says it's always two, never more, never less, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, is it master or apprentice? We don't know, right? And the camera pans to Palpatine.
Right.
And this would have been a great way to end the movie. But we get this ridiculously over the top and kid-friendly, corny-ass award ceremony thing. So basically it's like a version of like what we saw in episode 4 with the award thing, but it's like this parade. And it's like this lavish procession with the Gungan army. And like I get it, right? It's all peace and it's all peaceful in Naboo, yay, right? And look, like even with my cynical ass though, it's hard for me to take this shit seriously. And also for me, I kind of low-key hate that song that played during that sequence. I hate it.
With this I
hate it. I hate it. I hate the composition. I hate it. It's corny. It's dumb. I hate it. Dumb. It's not for me. Terrible, right? But anyway, so general thoughts on the film, right? So this to me is the main issue with Phantom Menace, right? Is what focus on what audience, right? That's the problem, right? Because this is the official start of the franchise and it's an introduction to the world of Star Wars to a younger generation, right? I can understand that it's targeting the kids, right? It's a new generation of Star Wars fans. That's what it is, right? But it constantly targets at that audience, right? So you get like the kid-friendly characters and set pieces, whether it's the pod race or whether it's characters like Jar Jar Binks or even young Anakin. It's for the kids, right? But the problem is it has to cater to the adult audience, right? The ones who grew up on the original franchise. They know about the world building, they know about that video, they know what's gonna happen eventually, right? And for me, I just saw this tonal imbalance between the light kid-friendly stuff and the dark mature stuff, right? So
Right.
in between the Jar Jar Binks and in between the pod race, you have talks of politics and negotiations, and you have
Yeah.
Darth Maul, and you have Qui-Gon's death and all that kind of stuff, right? It's trying to cater to both audiences, but the end result is just tonal imbalance, right? Controversial take here. The Mandalorian mostly solves that tonal problem for me, right? Where
Right.
you get the dark shit, but you also get the goofy shit as well, right? See what you want about Lizzo and Jack Black, but that's goofy shit, but you still get the dark shit that you want out of Mandalorian, right? And it doesn't feel as imbalanced as, well, sorry, Phantom Menace was, right? So I imagine like if I grew up on the old trilogy, like if I was alive back in 77, yeah, I would have been disappointed by Phantom Menace, right? But in a strange way, with all the jokes we can make about episode 2, right? I felt at least that one cut the dark tone down a lot better because it's showing Anakin's part to the dark side. Like this is the beginning of it, right? And the whole stuff with the Clone Wars and seeing it start, like that was intriguing to me, right? And still is, right? So in a way, I like that tonally, 2 is better than 1, right? I'm saying that 2 is better than 1, but just tonally, it's much more focused and better, right? But as far as just capitalizing on the whole evolution of CG and whatnot in Hollywood movies, yeah, this movie delivers, right? It's big budget filmmaking. It's epic filmmaking, in terms of the lens of the 90s, right? It's and it was leading up in the 2000s where, yeah, everything just went insane from that point on. Everything was just so big and so over the top and whatnot, right? For better or for worse, right? I mean, yeah, it came out on the tail end of the 90s, but look, it came out in the 90s, right? So forward to it does stand tall as probably one of the most expensive and most extravagant Hollywood movies ever made, right? And in retrospect, it makes sense that something like Star Wars was going to be one of the torchbearers of CG, right? Storytelling, right? Into the 2000s, right? So, as far as breathing new life into the franchise, I have the utmost respect for the Phantom Menace, right? And like even back then, like people, like kids who watching Star Wars for the first time, yeah, I could see them like being introduced to the old trilogy thanks to this, right? And I have no problem with that. That's cool, right? But I felt like if they just had a more focused tone, if they just balance the dark shit with the light shit, if you will, and if they just punch up the script, because yeah, we forgot to mention some kind of cheesy bars in this, and it got even worse with episode 2, where it was like on some real melodramatic shit, every single one of them, but not just the men, but the women and the children too.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
oof, right?
Yeah.
But if they had fixed those early on, then this would have pleased the fans, newbies and diehard fans alike, right? So it would have lived up to the hype that the old fans was waiting on, and that's why they were sleeping out and camping out in cinemas waiting for this thing to come out. And it would have pleased the kids who, yeah, was going spending money and begging begging the parents basically to spend money to carry them to see these things in theaters in the first place. So it could have catered to both audiences, but they really could have punched up the script and they really could have settled on a proper tone, right? So for me, and just looking at it in retrospect, I'll give this a 3 out of 5. It's aight for what it is. It's aight, you know what I mean? I would say if you haven't seen it, yeah, watch it. But if you jump into 2, you will get the gist of the story a lot clearer, in my opinion, in terms of the part that Anakin goes towards the dark side. Like I feel like this is where part 2 is where the story really kicks off, and this is just like the introduction, if you will, right? Like the intro, chapter, if you will, right? If you really think about it, right? But it is what it is, and I won't say that it doesn't deserve to be in the Star Wars universe because it already is, right? Just like the Last Jedi. Stop it. Don't come with no bullshit, but Last Jedi sucks. No, it's part of the universe. Shut up, accept it, right? Last thing, and then I'll shut up, right? Show had to wait, because I watch it home, right? It had to wait till the credits, like when the credits almost roll, there's a Haiti Darth Vader breathing sound effect. Like, it just had to remind people, yes, Anakin will become Darth Vader. No, we haven't forgotten.
'Cause
It's like,
the only
oh
thing we
gosh,
get
man,
with that,
like
yeah, the
really.
only thing we get with that is the whole. You could find a real cool. One of the coolest posters was that where the shadow
Oh,
is Darth Vader shadow. Yeah,
that's still, say what you want about
great, great
episode 1.
promotional.
That's one of the
Yeah,
best posters ever for
yeah,
Star Wars. I love
yeah.
that, right? But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's fine. I wouldn't watch it again in a hurry. I did not see it in 3D because why would I want to? Sorry. But I felt like, again, it's just that tonal imbalance and they just need to punch up that script. And we would have had a film that we could talk about now, 25 years after the fact, singing praises of it. But for now, it's fine. It's fine. Ricardo, your last thoughts, overall what you think work and what don't work and how you feel about it now and or what would you rate it?
Yeah, because I'm not super invested in Star Wars. It's one of those things that you only again most of the hate comes from because of that red letter media, review, that kind of thing. But yeah, I was never. I remember enjoying this for what it was. Yes, it is catering to children and a more mainstream appeal. And a lot of a lot of it was really just not telling George Lucas no. Like that is why it turned out that way. I felt if somebody was controlling George Lucas a little better or had a little more reign on him having a full control. This is there's a reason why it is that he didn't direct Empire and Jedi, right? There's a reason because he didn't. They need to tell him, he had too much control and they didn't tell him no, and that's a mistake, right? I felt if Lawrence Kasdan was there, this would have probably turned out a little better in terms of just chipping away at all the little bullshit or controlling what it is. He had to use way too surrounded by too many yes men. And that's how I understand that. But yeah, didn't hate this as much as other people. Most of the hate comes from just internet, reaction, performativity kind of stuff. That's how at least it feels to me. But yeah, rating, I don't know. It'll probably get maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10. It's one of those things that is a product of its time. Did you had to hype up yourself over it, or if you would have been into it or not. But I remember just enjoying it for what it was at the time. So that's it. Yeah.